Um, I'll introduce really quickly introduce Emily Mankey, who is admin coordinator for NABC. She'll be handling the chat. Please feel free to type your questions in there, and we'll make sure that we get to those. And if we do not get to those, Emily will provide the information to Evan, and we'll work together to get those answers and get them out to people along with a recording of today's presentation. Also joining us is Marty Solomon, who is offers additional administrative support to NABC for these projects. Here today to make sure that I don't forget anything and keep us all on the right track. And joining us today for a presentation is Evan Lewarch, who is a project manager at the Puget Sound Food Hub. Has a fascinating position. Evan and I have had the opportunity to meet and talk about and work on a few projects together. He will present. His presentation is scheduled to last about 25 minutes, half an hour, to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So please do enter your questions in the chat as they come up, and anticipate the opportunity to ask in real time when Evan is finished. Looking to Marty to make sure that I've not forgotten anything. Okay, good. That's good. Good start. I'd like to introduce Evan. Evan, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're busy.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everybody for taking time on this whatever day it is, Tuesday afternoon, to learn about food hubs and listen to me yammer on about how we're awesome and all that. So I'll start this off with a pretty picture because everyone likes a pretty picture. Let's see here. There we go. So this is from Viva Farms. I got to walk around with David, who he's changed titles a couple of times. He's one of their powerhouse staff over there, and just looking at some cool tunnels. But we're based out of Mount Vernon, Washington. So the Skagit Valley. Viva Farms is one of our member farmers and also a farm incubator. So I figure we set the stage for kind of who we are and where we are. So really the best way, sorry, quick introduction for me too. So like, what is a project manager for a food hub, and like, what do I do? Aside from our wholesale like business, market channels for our farmers, and one of those things is like large scale grants, large scale contracts with state agencies or school districts, and also doing like systems development and technical support on food safety or grant writing or whatever else. Prior to this role as project manager, which I've held for about a year, I was our operations manager, so dealing with the trucks and logistics of getting stuff out to people, and a couple other roles as well. So I've worked through the Food Hub for about 3 years now, and seen kind of a lot of different aspects of our business and also our growth. We've grown almost by a factor of 3 in the last 3 years. We'll see how it all pencils out into December, and then I can and brag about that number a little harder, but it's been pretty explosive. And we've changed our kind of fundamental business a couple times throughout there. A little background before all this, I was a Peace Corps volunteer working on agroforestry and beekeeping in Guinea in West Africa. I've gone through like the WOOF program for a bunch of like greater Seattle area and King County farms, and got familiar with kind of the regional and local food system. And now that I'm back from Peace Corps, I really wanted to focus on local food systems, and the Puget Sound Food Hub was and is a great place to start with that. So if you are a student and you're looking how to like get into a role like this is kind of my pathway, but there's a million ways to do it. Yeah, we'll see, farmers, other food hubs. This presentation kind of can flex either way as the audience goes. So what I'm going to do is kind of rush through a presentation that I did for a local food systems course that was offered out of Wazoo last year. And then we're going to kind of tailor all the Q&A to like, what do you guys want to hear about? We've got stories, we've got anecdotes, and we've got just like, broad knowledge of how we work and how other food hubs work. So that's the shape of the day, and I'll try not to bore you or talk too much. But really wanted to start this with like, what is a food hub? You might be coming here as a farmer or as a food system professional. You might have heard of us as a food hub or some other local food hub, but like, what is it? It can take on a lot of shapes, and so you'll see food hubs do different things, and you think like, is it value, or is it kind of like a legal structure? Well, it's kind of a little bit of everything. So the USDA definition is a business or organization that actively manages the aggregation, distribution, and marketing of source identified food products, primarily from local and regional producers to strengthen their ability to satisfy wholesale, retail, and institutional demand. And that's a mouthful, but each of those points really does like kind of make up a foundation of who we are as a food hub. And the source identified I highlighted because it's particularly important for like the difference between like a food hub and just like an agricultural sales business or broker, because we're representing the farms that make up the food hub. So you'll see about a trillion of this kind of diagram, but I made this one in PowerPoint, so I legally own it. So that's why I kept it in. But basically, we're taking product from many different sources, bringing it to a regional hub for ease of access, and then sending it to maybe a central hub, maybe direct to customer at that point. And then throughout that process, that farm's identity gets preserved to the end user, or at least as close as possible. We don't, like the grocery store might just have kale for sale. They might not identify the farm, but that grocery store does know where that kale came from. And so, yeah, or the restaurant, that kind of thing. And then you can also go direct to consumers as well. So maybe there should be a little line that points down from wholesale customers down to direct to consumer, because a lot of them are just one stage removed from the actual end consumer or end user of our products. So why would a farmer join a food hub? They might have like a lot of like local contacts. Sometimes they have to drive further away from some of those customers than they would to get to like their closest hub or the closest aggregation location for a hub. Well, it really is about reducing their overall logistical and accounting burden. So reduced invoicing, one stop for many customers, just like reducing the non-farming burden of a farmer, and buying into like an overall marketing distribution network. So depending on the ownership model of a food hub, you might have more or less of this kind of investment as a member farm, but either way, in general, a food hub will aggregate your product in one location and then deliver to multiple people. You'll get paid by one source, and you'll have your source identity maintained throughout. So it'll help generate sales even when you don't know the customer. For a customer, like what is the appeal? Well, the same deal, just like less logistical burden. You're not going to have lots of farms dropping off throughout the day. You're going to have a more reliable center point of contact for customer service problems, product shorts, all that. And then you have like one place to invoice rather than like 20 local farms who all have their different like levels of paperwork and compliance and everything. You just have like one contact that you can reach out to. And that source identity is very valuable to you as a customer too. So like restaurants that want to highlight local, or co-ops that have a whole local section, or grocery stores, or whoever else, that value stays there. They can present it. They can reach out to the farms directly. Yeah, and like that relationship with farmers is hard for a lot of customers too. So like you might have one farmer, that reaches out to you, or you reach out to them, but Food Hub's just like such a great resource for accessing a group of farmers and developing that relationship. It also like it all arrives at once, which is a big thing for receivers. Receiving hours are a hard thing to hit for, if you have 10 customers, someone's the last customer, right? So if you're a farm trying to go off all these different places, you might not be able to deliver to all of their receiving hours on time. So the Food Hub aggregating it and getting it all out with its efficient logistics network is just really useful. So this is the part we'll kind of like dive through really quick. And if you have questions about it later, we can dive back into it. It's actually all sourced from USDA's Running a Food Hub Volume 2. I actually haven't found Volume 1, but this was a great resource if you just kind of Google food hubs. And it's like a PDF like sitting on this one random website there, but it's a great overview of every type of food hub that exists by like all these different brackets. So we'll just kind of punch through them really fast, and then we can talk about it later if you want specific examples. So you can be nonprofit or for-profit. This affects kind of your business model and like your staffing. You can be basically like a sole ownership business or private investors, or you can be a cooperative or just like an LLC. All sorts of different ways of like owning a food hub. You can have a virtual model where like you don't actually own any infrastructure and you're subcontracting out all of these services, but still providing them for your membership or for your customers and producer base, depending on your ownership model. Or you can be physical. You can have trucks, you can have facility space, you can have full and part-time staff that are paid. And this all kind of feeds into when we talk about growth stages of food hubs too, because that's the jump from a lot of these different infrastructure models changes your business and vice versa. And then marketing or order models, like how does the produce get ordered and then how does it get to the customer? So a lot of food hubs do a just-in-time model. It's like a fresh sheet where you have a listing and you say like, well, we have this much kale, like please order our kale. People order it, it's harvested on demand and then delivered. This kind of contrasts with what you'll see in like kind of larger broadline distributors, which is kind of like an inventory model where they'll have produce in stock, they'll have projections about its sales, they might even have commitments, but it's already been harvested by the time it ends up in their warehouse, and it's not like on-demand harvesting, though there might be some level of that. And then kind of thinking about like, so what is the hub doing? Who are they selling to? Because that also kind of changes the order model. So if you have a CSA, community supported agriculture, where you're like, you're a customer, you're paying months in advance to the farm to produce something, and then give it to you on a weekly basis. It kind of changes the dynamic versus a wholesale model where you're trying to have kind of like larger scale production and serve like a certain customer base. But food hubs kind of aim for different things. Just from our own personal experience, we're kind of trying to hit all of them at once, but that's just because we're at a certain scale where we can try a little bit of everything. And then, yeah, do you use an online order system? Is it all phone calls? Is it like emails? Or are you like physically going out and talking to people? Food hubs do kind of all different sort of order models. And then this one was from the course. They had this as their textbook, so we can skip past it, but it was a great resource of like everything a la carte that a food hub can provide. And we'll have a link to all these resources too, and the slides later on. So if you're more interested in these things, you want to do a little reading on your own, we'll have that access for you. So just jumping through some quick examples. I won't highlight all of these folks, but you'll notice kind of the first paragraph group here is mostly folks that NABC works with on some level. Whidbey Island, Salmon Island, the Southwest Wa Food Hub are all kind of other NABC projects and kind of like sister hubs to the Puget Sound Food Hub. We also have Food Hub networks kind of on the bottom, and we have two partner food hubs, Link Foods and Western Montana Growers Co-op, WMGC, that are part of a Northwest Food Hub network where we're trying to do kind of like regional food hub sales as well. yeah, just like a quick list of other resources, other folks, if you're interested in a food hub, if you're interested in a local food hub to talk to, these are all great folks, and we got their websites there for you. So, okay, that's what a food hub is. We're 15 minutes in, so we got 10 minutes to talk about me or our food hub, and then we'll hit you guys with a Q&A session, and we can like dive really deep into anything you want. Another great picture of the Skagit Valley at sunset. But trucks are kind of the lifeblood of who we are. We're a wholesale distributor, and we do have infrastructure. So the trucks, when they go down, it takes a lot of resources to bring them back up. We always deliver to our customers, and it's one of our strengths is our customer service and our follow-up. So kind of going back to those specs of like what designation we are. We are for-profit. We are a farmer cooperative. So when we have to fill out like legal forms, if they offer that, we list that. And our ownership model is we're owned by our farmers. So farmers are members of the cooperative. They all have a voting right for all sorts of any of the dynamics of the cooperative, from like changing the legal docs to like electing the board of directors. Most of the time, like they'll like change like a period or a sentence in like our like founding paperwork, and then like on an annual basis, we'll elect new board of directors. I think it's like a 2-year term, and it's alternated so that we always have like some people in play and some people that are just can focus on their regular duties. Then the board of directors hires the GM, and then that kind of is like a closed loop with the membership. Then the GM works with staff and budget, and then works with the board to kind of maintain. So we have operations and we have membership, and they liaise between the board of directors and the general manager. And that prevents conflict of interest and all sorts of stuff like that. It makes really good producer and staff relations. If you want to join the Food Hub, you get onboarded by our general manager and our board of directors. And we have some values that you have to adhere to. So we cover them generally, just like good stuff, like treating your employees well and like being environmentally friendly. We don't necessarily explicitly require organic certification, but it is part of kind of our general values to be sustainable. And some of our farms just aren't at the scale where they can get certified. But we can cover that a little bit later. And then our marketing order model, kind of like I mentioned, it's a little bit of everything, mostly wholesale. So we don't like drive to like individual consumers like houses and drop off a box for them. But we do distribute CSA boxes for some of our member farms at drop sites. So we're kind of like at a pallet scale of like deliveries. We do take hand carts into the city of Seattle and like run through restaurants and all sorts of crazy stuff. But in general, it's like wholesale customers and larger scale buyers. We are mostly a just-in-time harvest model. We did start doing a little bit of lightly rotated fresh inventory in the past summer, just to meet kind of produce department demands at some grocery stores that want to deliver like every day. So now we do deliver 6 days a week. And yeah, lots of exceptions. So we bend our online platform basically as far as it can go. And we actually are talking with them all the time about like what new resources we need developed so that we can keep on running. Our membership, we've got 60 active member farms, ranches, and some, I think we have like 1 fishing co-op. And then we have 20 active vendors who are non-voting, but they can sell their product through the hub, and they're not growing the produce. So like to be a member farm, you have to like grow 51% of what you sell. And it's kind of like a funky distinction, but the way I like to talk about it is like we have a pie vendor that could buy local berries, and they sometimes do, but they're a vendor because they're not growing the berries. We have a juice maker that sells local cider, but he grows all the apples. So he's a vendor, or sorry, so he's a member. And that's kind of the distinction. But yeah, we're small scale farms. The average farm scale is less than 10 acres. We have several bigger ones that are several hundred acres. But you know, over those 60 members, a lot of family scale farms. I'm just kind of rushing through so we stay on top of time. We've got a warehouse in Mount Vernon. It's actually leased from the Christensen's nursery. And it's like an old potato processing shed just on like Best Road and McLean Road. And at first we like couldn't fill it. Now it's like way too full, and we're like trying to rent the next bay over just to like support all of our movement of product. We got an infrastructure grant, so we'll be expanding our cooler. Right now we have 2 that can store about 100 pallets of produce. And it gets full, and then we do aggregate produce, so it like sits there for like 12 hours and then moves out. But then we also have a lot of overlapping aggregation days now. So yeah, like that warehouse, I mean, we might move like 300 pallets through a given week of cold storage stuff. So it's fast moving, especially during peak season when you can barely keep produce in the door before it's all the way out. We currently have about 5 trucks with another 3 that are leased. This has changed. We kind of doubled our fleet, but we also took over distribution of the San Juan Islands, which was a whole like complicated thing. So that's why I say like kind of we have 5 trucks. And well, we do have 5 trucks, but we have another 3 that are kind of ours. We're at up to 30 staff, 5 full-time salary and 20 full-time hourly, and then 5 like kind of part-time warehouse, like box packers and box slingers. All of our drivers are pretty much full-time at this point. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to power through the next 5 minutes here. It's important to put our mission in here because I think that does also distinguish us as a food hub. So beyond the traceability, right, you could have a business that is sourcing local and providing that value, but what we really want to do is support that, like the family scale farms. And so you'll see our, our mission, vision, and values all kind of talk about that in addition to like the benefit of being cooperative and supporting community and family and everything like that. Let's see. Okay. This is me talking about our big WSDA contract, which I'm sure someone's going to ask about, but we'll save that for Q&A. And then just kind of our general like market so that people kind of know, who we're selling to. About 40% is retail, grocery, and co-op. We've got 28% that is hunger relief and WSDA contracts for hunger relief. And that really skews it because non-WSDA contracted hunger relief is much lower. Restaurants, food service, and then just kind of like direct to consumer businesses are like the remaining kind of 30%. So we've broken it out a bunch of different ways, but they all have like slightly different relationships we have with the buyers. So that's kind of why we look at it that way. External people might look at it and go, oh, group those together and don't group those together. But this is just kind of a quick glance. PCC and Hagen are kind of our biggest customers, and then the WSDA contract, and then about 1 million restaurants throughout the greater Puget Sound area. And we can just snap back to some of these things when we talk Q&A. Here's our box programs. Services I've kind of alluded to already, but yeah, everything that Food Hub can do, we're kind of doing. So we're distributing for our farmers. We have sales staff that are generating sales leads and also matching up purchasing commitments, and also just kind of generating excitement about our farms. We have full-time customer service staff. We use an online sales platform called Local Food Marketplace, along with a lot of the other hubs in the region. Producers get to control their pricing, and then we have a margin that basically accounts for everything: distribution, marketing, sales, all that. We can provide storage to our producers. We even have a pack shed that has infrastructure in it. Sorry, and then my the last bullet point is blocked by my presentation thing, but I'm sure it's something cool that we're doing. Yeah, I mean, the rest of this stuff, let's just get people asking questions. I can jump to the slide. When we talk about our order cycle, it's cool, but it's just like a 3-day cycle, and then you layer that 6 times a week, with Tuesday and Friday being our biggest. And then talking about like, who do we directly compete with in the market, but also still work with on a regular basis. The big thing I do want to mention before we jump into this, and it's probably going to be someone's question, is how do we jump from like an idea to being a food hub at our stage? And so I kind of broke it out in these 5 stages. NABC would honestly have a lot more experience with the first 2, but you kind of start out with this idea of Skagit and Whatcom farmers not wanting to compete with each other for the same customers, but rather expand their market out into the wholesale market with, accessing Seattle. Basically, Seattle's kind of like the prize of the region for large, almost near infinite, like organic local sales, like produce interest. So meeting together and saying like, whatever we do in Skagit and Whatcom is fine, as long as we can all like participate in the marketplace. So that stakeholder interest, getting out to like a legal entity where kind of 4 founding members brought different aspects. NABC brought accounting and originally hosted our marketing, like our sales platform. Cloud Mountain provided an aggregation space and some trucks. 21 Acres provided some trucks, and Bow Hill Blueberries provided a aggregation space and also, I believe, some trucks. And then over time, right, we invested in specific infrastructure for the cooperative. So now we have this warehouse space in Mount Vernon. We have our own trucks. We have our own staff. We shifted staff from part-time to full-time. We continued to invest in infrastructure. We started to expand to actual departments rather than just jack of all trades staff doing everything. And that helped us get bigger projects, more contracts, more farmer support, and more sales. So with that, questions?
Hi, Evan. Is this the way we do questions? I'm sorry.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, okay, it just happened. This is Trish with the Washington Food Coalition. We're the coalition of food banks and meal programs throughout the state. And I was just curious, and I apologize if I missed this. Do you have a lot of food banks or food pantries purchasing through the Food Hub? And how can we expand that? How can we make sure more folks know about you?
Sweet, yeah. And I apologize. I was originally planning on going to that like coalition summit or whatever you had.
Yeah.
No, it fell on our pack day for Hunger Relief program. So everyone who was actually Hunger Relief related was packing produce boxes that day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we have kind of two channels. One, the big WSDA contract, We Feed Washington. That one, you can, as a food bank, ask to partner with us, and we can apply to like work with you if there's funding back there. They put in funding for 2 more years of the program, at least in their budget. We'll see if it gets approved.
Yeah.
But we're certainly excited for that. And so that's like step 1. If you want to work with a We Feed WA contractor and are interested in working with us or someone local, just reach out to them and they'll apply. We also got assigned stuff from WSDA as well. So folks that we didn't know were interested, but were talking to WSDA also got assigned to us when we applied.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And there's, yeah, just a couple different ways that contract worked out. But aside from that, I mean, Bellingham Food Bank has been working with us for years. They've been working with our farmers long before we existed. And so they're kind of like our anchor food bank. They also have a lot of funding and are like really able to invest in like equitable local food systems. They like really prioritize working with local farmers, and they have that flexible spending. We're not currently participating in TFAP, though. We do help some food banks jump product from a TFAP distribution center out to their site. We're doing that in San Juan's, just because we also deliver to the San Juan food banks.
Oh, I see.
Through our contracts, we're just toss another pallet on our, and we deliver to community action of Skagit County. So we jump stuff that way. So you can engage with us as just like a socially conscious, distribution business. You can engage with us as, buying from our member farms directly and excluding us out totally. That's totally fine. You can also buy through our website or participate in, one of these contracts. Kind of the biggest thing that wasn't like a normal like food bank purchase was Volunteers of America was working with the Snohomish Coalition, and they bought some like produce boxes that were effectively like the We Feed WA stuff, and then they actually just got included in the next round of the program, and so now they don't have to spend their own money, they got to spend WSDA money, which was great.
Yeah, really great.
Yeah, but if you're interested, I've been meaning to reach out to you folks as well. I've got an infinite list of contacts we need to, as project manager, there's just so many different things to do. But reach out to me via email, maybe we can chat, set up a meeting with a couple of stakeholders or whoever else you want part of it. It can be some of our staff, it can be Max, if he's ever free at Bellingham Food Bank, can talk. He loves to talk about that stuff, and I love talking with him about it too. So
sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, looks like Max was just in the chat anyway.
Well, I'll chime in with a question. You mentioned how important it was to maintain the identity of your farmers and keep that through that identity preservation through the process. How do you do that? What's the mechanism?
Yeah, I mean, because it's like a very short supply chain from our farmers to our customers, there isn't like an extra step that like dilutes it. So our software, Local Food Marketplace, preserves that like farmer identity on the invoice. So when you order carrots from us, you're not ordering carrots, you're ordering Boldly Grown Farms carrots or Ralph's Greenhouse carrots. And they all live next to each other on the marketplace. You can see them all side by side, and they do have different prices. And that's like kind of an interesting dynamic that we do face. We don't, tell our farmers to set their prices at something. They do kind of compete with each other, but also they have relationships with their customers as well. So like a restaurant that's buying carrots, they might know Boldly Grown Farm. Like they might have visited on a farm tour. They might have like reached out and had our sales team like talk about someone, or they might be trying to access, like a BIPOC farmer and say like, we really value this. We want to support this. We want to use our money to support this. And then we can either pair them up with them, or they can also look at our website and go, okay, like I want to buy blueberries from Silva Farms and support them that way. But yeah, it's maintained from on the invoice. Sweet. Okay, I can answer Melissa's question here too. So the process is it's a multi-stage process. Sorry, the question is, what is the process for a farmer to become a member and start selling on the Food Hub? It's a multi-stage process, and it can start with you as a farmer, just reaching out to us, or like we might also recruit farms to fill a void in our product offerings. It's kind of worked both ways. Also, if you're a vendor and want to sell through us, you can reach out, and sometimes grocery stores or like head buyers of institutions say like, I want a distributor for this product, can you distribute it? And then we reach out to the product producer and say like, well, like, we already have a sale for you. Do you want to join? We fill out a survey. So like the long and short of it is you go through an application process. Some of it requires a certain level of insurance, food safety paperwork, like a food safety plan. And we, for all farms, we try to have a PSA grower training for like one member of your staff. Ideally, whoever wrote your food safety plan. So like food safety and like legal stuff aside, then there's also the values component. So you basically affirm that you value workers' rights and animals' rights and sustainability or sustainable practices. And then if all those things line up, and oh, one other thing I should mention is we do usually want you to have like an anchor customer that's a wholesale customer, just so you have a reason to show up to our warehouse every week. That really helps, because sometimes, if you don't have at least one person that you would normally deliver to, then say you're an herb farm, you might only show up with like, $50 worth of herbs. It's kind of a pain in the butt to drive out to our warehouse just for that. But you slowly develop the sales over time. So if you have an anchor customer that's already buying a large amount, or at least a reasonable amount, a reason for you to come out to our warehouse, then we found that really drives success. And it also incentivizes you to offer more, sell more through the hub. So it's usually a really beneficial thing. So food safety, wholesale experience, and at least one anchor customer. And it can be one of our customers we already delivered to. In fact, that's better, because then we don't have to develop a whole logistical channel to get your product out someplace. Though we love a new sales lead. And then the values. If you submit all that paperwork, then we try to do it on a monthly basis. It really depends on like an administrative barriers for like how much time it takes to process everything. But then it does go up to our general manager, who will review it all. He'll do a farm visit or a site visit, depending on what you're producing, and just make sure it checks all the boxes. He'll present it to the board at the next monthly meeting, and then usually, if you've been approved by the GM, then it's approved like the week of that producers meeting, and we can kind of move on from there. And then we do like an onboarding process and getting used to our software and all that kind of stuff. So it can take some time. It might take a whole season. It really depends. We do have farmers reach out to us in like July and August, and it's just a really bad time. Like that's when you're competing with everyone else who's already a member farm. But if you reach out to us in January, it's slow. It's a great time. So, if you want to take a look and submit stuff to us, this month or next, and then just keep on poking us. It usually gets pushed through pretty fast. Obviously exceptions here and there, and if your paperwork gets delayed, it's a little bit of pain for everybody, but that's kind of the general process for anyone who's interested. I guess I should mention too, so we are delivering through the Puget Sound region, but we're really like Olympia to the Canadian border, and mostly like Bellingham to Seattle. But we do branch off to the San Juans, we branch off to the Kitsap Peninsula, we branch off to the Olympic Peninsula a little bit, usually through cross-dock relationships. Sometimes we send trucks out there. It's a big pain to get them back when they go down, but we've done a little bit of everything out there. But we're west of the Cascades. So if you are an Eastern Washington producer, I'd highly recommend working with Link Foods or the Walla Walla Food Hub. And then if you're like Olympia and South, the Southwest Walla Food Hub is great and is trying to, accelerate San Juan's, and then Whidbey Island Growers Cooperative. We have just like all these partner food hubs. So if you want what we're offering, but you're not super close to us, I'd recommend seeing if there's already an entity kind of like us around. Because in the next couple of years, I think these regional food relationships will end up accessing a lot of the same markets for everybody.
I have a question for you, Evan. Does the Puget Sound Food Hub sell to schools at all. Sorry, frog in my throat.
Yeah, and in fact, it's probably accelerated by about 1,000% this last year because of the WSDA, like local food purchasing grants that a lot of school districts got access to. Yeah, it's been a great program. Basically, if you give school districts money to buy local, they'll buy local. But they have challenges accessing local farms or developing multiple relationships with multiple farms because they're very busy folks. Like, you know, I can only imagine what COVID has been like for those poor buyers where they're turning on and off remote instruction like on a whim, not on a whim, but like on a weekly basis sometimes. So they're incredibly busy and they don't always have time to develop a relationship. But we've noticed just a huge increase in interest. It kind of depends on the school district's models. We've developed probably 3 distribution models for schools. We align best when there's a central kitchen. We can just drop it one place. Most schools don't have that, unfortunately. Like some schools, there is no centralization at all, and every school kind of like up to it on their own. Sometimes there's like satellite kitchens that cover 5 to 6 schools, and we can drop it at one. And some schools require us to deliver to every single one. And we've done that. Once we did deliver to 20 schools, and each school got like 1 bag of cut squash. And we're like, okay, that's line of like what we cannot do. When we deliver like 5 pallets of produce to like a big central kitchen, it's like, we definitely want to do that. And then like everything else, it's like, okay, what kind of logistics handle in a given week or a given season? But all that is relationship building. So we just talk to the buyers and see what they need, and we kind of try to match it to what they need and what we can do. So yeah, schools are huge this year. I hope they continue to be huge kind of for the duration. It's really great to see local fresh produce going into school lunches.
I have a quick question about the schools in terms of pricing. Actually, anything that's not restaurants going on the platform and buying, and I apologize in advance, I'm having some work done at my house and it's very loud. And so the question would be, is the model for your other sales, your distribution arms, like to schools, food banks, anything outside of like a restaurant just coming onto the platform and choosing, you know, my kale and say microgreens or something, right? For the schools, is it a separate way that they purchase? I imagine if they're getting pallet loads of things, they're not just going and picking on the website, but they could be. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Totally. Yeah. So that kind of like that relationship is, well, it depends. So if they are contracting with us, they might say like, we are going to spend X amount of money on carrots and kale, and we'll write in some flexibility into the contract, and you need to quote us a price. Schools do have that extra like levels depending on the price, the amount of product sold. You fall into different like competitiveness like requirements. So you have to like list out like a general listing, or you have to source quotes from 2 or 3 like businesses. So if you want to order carrots and you want to have, if you want to spend less than 10 grand on carrots, then you need to like at least do some basic market research on like how much carrots should cost based on a couple of factors. If you want to spend between 10 and 75K, then you have to like actually formally request a quote from at least 2 businesses. And if it's over 75K, it's a more complicated process. I believe like closed bid process where like you can score things, but anyway, it's a whole like layer that schools, there should be someone at every school district that at least knows the legal requirements that they have. It also like the most stringent thing applies. So if your school district or your like higher level of school entity like has a requirement, then you have to follow that one. And then it's like federal and state. Washington's like more open than the federal requirements on that, just to promote stuff. But then the federal requirements are more strict, so the most strict one applies. As far as like, I think built into your question are a couple things. One, margin. So like what are we charging them? And the margins do vary. So we have a lower margin for schools than street buyers. Street buyers being someone signs up and just starts buying stuff. We also have a dedicated sales team that focuses on schools. So we have a broker that's part of a grant-supported program that's focusing on developing institutional sales. And so Michelle, who works for Kitchen Sink Strategies and also part-time for us, is our point of contact for schools. And so she works with folks to like build out like a purchasing plan. And we haven't gotten to the point where we're like putting seeds in the ground for a given customer, which ideally would be the next step of production planning. But we are looking at our total supply. And so for a school might say like, I just need weekly supply of apples. They don't have to go in and put it in. We'll just generate it. Michelle will make sure it happens. And she'll deal with all the sourcing and all the price quotes and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, some schools do just sign up. They buy from us 2 or 3 times a year, and that's that. It ends up with them, and they're happy with it. I think a lot of the like planning and like large scale stuff comes from working with the head buyer or like the lead nutrition staff at a given school district, and then kind of working with any contacts that they want within their network. So sometimes you might work with the head nutrition staff, and then they authorize all the kitchen staff from these different high schools, and then maybe the elementary school has to like listen to the high school. There's kind of a case by case hierarchy to all of it. But I hope that answers the question. Is it really depends on the school?
It does. I think going any further into this, into like how a farmer would be involved in that program, I should probably just talk straight to Michelle. So if you could pop her email into the chat, that would help me a lot. Thank you.
And for just a little clarifying too, we sell only our member farm produce to schools at the moment, though we do sometimes work if there's like a partner hub that wants to sell some stuff or has something that we don't have. We do also sometimes jump product out there. Yeah,
that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. But I'll put Michelle's contact in there. Let's see, maybe we'll have it as a follow-up, just so I don't jump out of the slideshow to get it for you. Yeah, we'll include that with all the Q&A stuff. We're gonna have some sales channels, contacts for schools and for hunger relief and all that. So I'll make some homework for myself, and I'll work with Marty and Emily to get those resources out to folks. How about that?
That is perfect. Thank you.
Evan, I have a question, and that is Puget Sound Food Hub doing any food processing, like minimal food processing at this point?
Yeah, I didn't put it in the slides because we weren't doing it when I made these slides, and I didn't want to add like 20 more minutes to the presentation, but we actually did. We got a grant to focus on developing food processing, and ideally for like institutions, but really for kind of anyone who wants it. Schools actually are a great fit as long as the price point works out. So we do have some like larger scale farms that can have a lower price point. We could process their food at volume and then sell it to school districts. And we also have some like one farm actually does on-site processing. So we have a cubed sugar Hubbard squash that's processed on site. So that was formerly our only processed food, but we actually have a staff member that has a lot of experience in like the culinary world that's been kind of heading our development of lightly processed stuff. And our partner organization, the Cloud Mountain Farm Center, got a infrastructure grant for a blast freezer and some further like processing facilities. So we're partnering with them just because they have the space and they wanted to expand their stuff to be like an anchor tenant there. So if folks are interested in lightly processed local food, Yeah, we'll also put that in our post Q&A doc for y'all. It's not for sale yet. We did a one trial, I think, for like the Seattle School District, and we've done a couple trials for a couple restaurants. But it's something down the pipeline, and like if you want to build a program around it, we're definitely interested in demand. So if you say like, I definitely need like this much process, and you want to quote, that'll really help us develop that program.
I know we're getting close on time. Evan, I just want to give you the opportunity, that kind of open-ended, what's next? Where are you headed? What's on the horizon for Puget Sound Food Hub?
Sweet. Yeah, this year, well, we've changed kind of like who we are like every 6 months. So any strategic plan for a year is a little bit like outdated before we even hit the growing season. But I'm hoping this year is the big year of like staffing stability. So staffing in advance of growth. We've been like by your bootstraps, like, you know, a little bit crazy for the past, well, really since we've ever been founded, but I haven't had to drive the truck for at least 6 months. So I call that a success. We kind of use an analogy of like managing the food hub is like building sandcastles at like mid tide. Like you like dig a moat, but you know there's a big wave coming, and like you know, we have a bigger staff, more organization, more infrastructure that like is more moats away from the center, but like, you know, there's going to be a wave that gets you at the end. And growth to me is like we pick a spot a little bit up the beach, you know. So yeah, I think this year, you know, we're waiting on to hear about We Feed WA. That's a big question mark, since it's you know, about 1/3 of our sales as seen. It's like a much lower percentage of our actual like revenue, but it's still there, and it's like a really great program for stabilizing our staffing, because folks can drive and they can pack a box once a week, and it helps fill out their hours on a low stress shift. But yeah, probably a little more work on producer support. We've got some grants to do more GAP certification. So like reducing barriers to GAP, reducing barriers to more institutional sales, and then investing in infrastructure and resources for our member farms. We also have our five-year strategic plan that's, you know, says like 10 million in sales in 5 years, and all sorts of things. Honestly, we've achieved a large chunk of the strategic plan without even directly targeting anything. It's just kind of like the plan is an expansion of our values and our capacity. So yeah, I mean, like I think membership engagement honestly is on my radar this year. We've done this great thing. There was a while where like the membership and the hub were like, you know, obviously knew everything, and now it's like even like departments in the food hub don't know everything we're doing, because we're just doing so much. So just, yeah, finding stability and good energy and where we're at, and paying it back to the membership with resources and whatever else they want. Yeah, I think that's the future for us.
Well, that is awesome. Evan, thank you so much. If there are additional questions, just get them in the chat really quickly. We'll deal with it. Marty, if you don't mind taking us out, I think you've got some foreshadowing on the next Lunch and Learn as well.
I do. Thank you so much, Evan. That was just really interesting and great to hear about all the good work going on at Puget Sound Food Hub Co-op. I'm so glad Trish could join us today. Trish is going to be presenting the next Lunch and Learn, which is going to be January 26th. That's a Thursday, January 26th. Trish is with the Washington Food Coalition, in case you didn't catch that earlier. And so she'll be telling us about the good work going on there. Thanks so much, everybody, for participating today. And we'll get this Q&A, the slides, and the meeting recording out to you as soon as possible.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Evan. Any
Take
parting
care.
words? You want to take us out?
Buy local, support your local hub.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Thanks, everybody.
Evan.
Thanks, everybody.